Hello, this is the Reynolds, and this is our story. We're going to continue our docuseries. We're on docuseries number 5, and I concluded last week telling of our experience of living with the rat population and the deliverance after much prayer and fasting. I'm not sure really how long we stayed in this house, but it was located about a third of a mile from our church that we had been forced to leave. And as we were praying one night, you have to understand that houses in Samoa have a lot of windows, and it's very hot in the tropics, and without air conditioning, it's necessary to keep the windows open. We had louver windows, and it had screens, keep the mosquitoes out. But as we prayed there with these windows open, anybody that was outside and even those that were living downstairs could hear us pray each evening. As we were praying one evening, I noticed a large group of people out under the trees in our yard. And when I looked closely, I realized it was our youth group from our church just down the street. Our young people had come, and we found this out later, on a number of occasions to listen to their pastor and his wife pray. These kids didn't understand what had happened. It was a sad time for us and for the young people that loved us so much. What we soon realized about this place where we were living, it was a place I believe that God provided. He provided this house, even with the rats. I think He allowed them to hang around just to teach us patience. But it was a time to be quiet, a time to reflect, a time to wait. We weren't discouraged. We didn't get in a hurry. We prayed and we waited on the Lord. One evening as we continued our prayer and fasting, we hadn't been praying very long. I guess it was around 8:45. My wife said to me, "You know, someone is coming here tonight." I was really skeptical about that because I know Samoans, they didn't go visiting this time of night without a real important reason, especially to a pastor's house. But right around 9 p.m., the lights of a pickup truck shined on our windows as someone pulled into our driveway. And it backed into a space, and 2 people got out and came up the stairs to our front door, and they began to knock. When I opened the door, the man said to me, "The Holy Ghost sent us here tonight." I said, "Well, by all means, please come in." They came and sat down. The couple was Viinga and Filinaka Tarrant. They pastored Assembly of God Church in the village of Aua. They told us they had a 3-story building in Pangopango and said the Lord had spoken to them to have us come and start a church and provided us a place to live. They said they didn't want any money. They just wanted us to come immediately and move into this 3-story building. It had been a motel for a number of years, and it had been managed by a Korean business group, a business man and his group. And you can imagine how this motel was used, knowing who was renting this property. And it had a very bad reputation. When I came to look at the building the next day after they asked us to come, different ones in the area asked us, "Do you know what this place has been? What kind of a place this has provided on this island?" I told him, "I don't care. The devil's had it long enough, and we're going to use it for a church now. Now, as I mentioned in a past recording of where this building was located, as we drove up that hill that day, up this steep road to go and look at this building, when I was halfway up, I stopped. And I turned to my wife and I said, honey, I lived on this hill when I was 15 years old. This is the place where my father rented an old house when we first arrived in America, Samoa. 1963, probably about December. Let me tell you something about this location. First of all, let me tell you of hearing and reading about spiritual warfare that I had studied in the past, how people experience many frightening things as they encounter demonic spirits and are warring against us continually in the spirit world. So before I ever met the Terrence or moved to this location in Pago Pago, American Samoa, it must have been a year or two before I saw a vision from the Lord. In this vision, and I'm telling you, it was lifelike. My wife, my young daughter, and I were riding in a back seat of a Volkswagen car, little car. The driver was Brother W.E. Davis, and Sister Davis was in the passenger seat. If you remember, the Davises were appointed missionaries to America Samoa that I talked about in an earlier broadcast, and they had spent 4 years working in the islands. And when we arrived, Sister Davis had already left, but I knew they both had been so discouraged when they finally left Samoa. They felt like they had wasted their time. Oh, but how wrong they were. Not one day was wasted, I promise you. We love and appreciate their work of love for the Samoan people, because they did truly love the Samoan people. God showed me in this vision that the Davises were in the battle with us, and we would fight this battle together. We had been talking about all the trials while we were riding in this little Volkswagen, the testing, the problems we had been through working in the Samoan Islands. Brother Davis was so caught up in his narrative that he was relating to us that he wasn't watching where he was going. I looked and I saw we were about to hit a tree. It was raining hard. The road was very muddy. So as we swerved to miss the tree, we began to slip and slide very dangerously, missing trees on the right and on the left. And I thought for a moment that we were going to crash. I just knew we were. But somehow we finally came out on a road I didn't recognize. And when we started up this road, it was very steep and very dark where we were. I was worried, so I told Brother Davis, stop, let's get out here. And I told him, let's walk up and see if we can find someone to help us figure out where we are. It was late at night. So we began to walk up this steep, dark road. Now this is a vision I had. But as we were walking up the road, I looked back down where we had come from, and there at the bottom of the road, there was a street light. And under that street light was a gang of bad-looking men. Their leader looked like he had a poncho on, and he was pointing up there where we were and cursing and saying terrible things that he was going to do to us. We were very afraid and began to quickly walk up this steep hill. And I told my wife and my daughter, I said, stay with me. And I told the Davises to stay with us. And we finally found ourselves with our backs against the wall of this 3-story building. There were other tall buildings around us that kind of created a courtyard. And we found ourselves facing the road that we had come up. And coming down that road, coming up that road, was this gang of gangsters, these men that were threatening our lives. They had guns, they had knives, they had chains. I remember them slinging those chains around in their hands. And then suddenly off to the side there came another gang of men who I thought at first were there to help us. But I realized quickly that they had evil intentions toward us as well. Of course, we were all praying. We were pleading with God to save us. But as we prayed, these two gangs surrounded us with knives extended toward us. I noticed, though, that I had a knife in my hand. And it looked just like the knife that was in their hand. I thought that was interesting. So I noticed when I poked my knife at them, they would jump back, move back. But it didn't take me long to figure out that we were done for. If God didn't help us, I felt like we were going to die in this vision. I finally just dropped my hand with the knife at my side, and I thought, well, it's over. I was praying, asking the Lord. I made one final prayer when suddenly I heard a voice of a young lady that I knew well. I had baptized this young lady and pastored her some years before. And she said to me, she wasn't there, I didn't see her, but I heard her voice. And she said to me in a loud voice, "It's working, Brother Reynolds." And so my eyes were closed, and I opened my eyes and I raised my hand with that knife in it. And I'm telling you, it wasn't that little knife anymore. It was a sword that was glowing brightly like a fire. And I tell you, I took that sword and I pointed it at these gangsters. And every one of them that I touched with that knife, they burn up before my eyes and turn to ashes. I mean, they just poof, they were gone until there was not one of those gangsters standing there. And then suddenly I heard a screech out of the windows of the building that this building was 3 stories, and out of the windows came these women. They were dressed in black, and they were flying like witches. And when they came flying and screaming at me, I took my sword and I poked it at them. And when I did, the same thing happened. They screamed and they turned to ashes and just blew away. I'm telling you, it was so realistic. This vision was given to me before I ever talked to the Terrence. Now, I told you this vision because when we drove up that hill to look at the building, the Terrence told us that they wanted us to use. Once again, I recognized where I was. This is where I lived when I was 15 years old. God brought us to our next location where we would win a great battle against the kingdoms of Satan. Yes, this was the place where revival would begin to burn in America Samoa, a place God chose, a place where strongholds would come down, the place where lives would be changed. It brought back my memory of my father sitting in that old house that we rented and hearing my father pray and ask God, where should we start our mission here in America Samoa? Not realizing that the very place we were living was a place that God had already chosen. But He hadn't showed that to us at the time. So we ended up in Le Purpur, on Atofal's land. And of course, there's more to that story that is yet to be told. But tonight, I am so grateful that God had a plan. And because of that plan, Samoan people are being saved day after day. We're working with Samoan people right here in Alaska, the last place I would have ever dreamed of finding Samoan people, because Samoa is a very tropical island, and they don't know what snow and ice is all about. But this great group of people that we have here in Anchorage, Alaska, they've discovered the snow and the ice, and I kind of think they prefer it more than the heat and the humidity that's in Samoa. We spent 30 days there just a few weeks ago and reintroduced ourselves to that humidity. Hey, we survived. Matter of fact, I didn't even really mind it that much. We had an exciting time. We preached 16 times in 30 days. We preached in 6 churches in America and Western Samoa. What a marvelous time we had. But this is where I'm going to conclude tonight. I just wanted to share just a little bit of this victory report about what God is doing right now. God bless you tonight. Thank you for giving us your kind attention.